Hi ladies, it's Beck. I'm back for part 2 of our first round of Stampin Blends Club. So our next card that we did at Club was this one here using the Climbing Orchid stamp set. And so for this card we learned how to actually use our two shades, our light and our dark, to get a blended and shaded look to our colouring. So I'm going to try to zoom right in so that you can see clearly what I'm doing here. And this is just, for this first one, it's just a simple way to shade and blend. There are lots of different techniques and you may find your own preference for how you like to do it, but I'll start out showing you what I think is the easy way to do it. So let's get started here. I'll see if I can zoom in a little closer. So first of all, we've got the little buds here from the orchid stamp. So these are quite small, so it's quite easy and quick to get a little blended colouring going on here. So I'm taking my light, Flirty Flamingo light marker and my brush tip, and I'm laying down a layer of colour here. Now you'll find that things will blend much better when they're wet. So you want to saturate the paper. It takes you maybe 3 or 4 goes to actually saturate that completely. While it's wet, take your dark Flirty Flamingo marker and just put a little bit there at the bottom of the bud. Can you see that? Now you could leave that like that, or if you would like a bit more blended, come back with your light one and starting where the dark is, drag it up into the light with little flicks, little strokes. Okay, so that's one method, and you can see now that that's a lot more blended. There's no line really between the dark and the light. For the next one, I'll show you another technique. So that was the flicking. This time, again, we'll lay down our saturation of light. I'm just going to leave the lid off this time. Come in with our dark, put a little bit there. The dark, oh, I can see I've gone outside the lines a little bit, that's okay. And now we're going to do little circles, little round circles, just where the dark meets the light. So that's another method for blending. So let me see, can you see that? Hopefully you can. Okay, so now we'll come in with the flower. So here's a couple of petals I've already coloured. I'm going to work over to here. So when you're colouring flowers, when you're colouring anything, you're supposed to think about where the light and where the shadows will be. But that can be tricky if you're not used to it, and I still find that tricky. So my basic method for colouring flowers is to, again, like with the buds, lay down a whole layer of light on one petal. And then for the dark areas, I usually will have some dark coming out from the centre, and then generally a little bit around the edges of the petal, because if that petal was curled over like that, the light would be hitting the top of it, and then so these ends would be dark around the edges. I hope that makes sense. But anyway, we're going to work just one petal at a time, because as I said with the buds, things blend much better while they're wet. So if you colour the whole flower with your light marker first, by the time you go back to put some dark on, the light has probably dried where you started, so then it doesn't blend as easily. So I'm putting lots of the light on, make it nice and saturated. Come back in with my dark. You can see I'm using the brush tip this time because we are working with a bigger area. With our first card, when we did the cake, we were just working in little tiny areas, so the bullet tip gave me more control there. Now I'm working a bigger area. I like to use the brush tip. So I hope you can see where I've added the dark there. Now I'm going to come back in with my light and use the flicking method to blend that dark out into the light. Just get rid of any harsh lines, or you can use your round and round in circles method. So it's personal preference which way you like to do it, or sometimes it might depend on what you're colouring as to which method you feel is going to work best for that. So you'll see when it's wet it looks a little bit more orangey. Sometimes when you're colouring you're thinking it's not looking too fabulous, but give it a minute to dry and it will settle. If you're still not happy with it, of course you can stamp another one. There's a spare one here. You can stamp another one and colour again, or because they are alcohol markers and the alcohol evaporates quickly, you can lay down more colour over the top. You can do quite a few layers. It's not going to ruin your paper like a water-based marker would with all the water pilling the paper. The alcohol evaporates quick enough that you don't need to worry too much about that. So here's our finished card. I'll zoom back out a little bit. Here's our finished card. So we cut that one out and we layered it up onto there. So it's just a very simple method of shading and blending. So lay down a wash of the light colour. While it's still wet, pop some dark where you want the shadows to be, or the centre of the flower is a good place to start, and then use your flicking method or your circular method to blend the line between the dark and the light. So next month we're going to add in the Pineapple Punch markers, the Call Me Clover Dark and the Colour Lifter, and so I'll teach you some techniques with your Colour Lifter for fixing mistakes and for adding highlights. Okay, now hopefully this video was nice and clear for you. I'll upload it and we'll see how we go. Thanks ladies.